do this.
Okay. Hi, everyone. While people are joining, we're just going to wait a few minutes until we think we have everyone. All right. I think we can start. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Andrukovich. I'm Curator of Education at Fallingwater. And first, I want to thank you for joining our lecture today. We are so pleased to welcome today's guest, Andrew Pielage. Before I hand it over to him, though, a few housekeeping items. First, we invite you to your questions and your comments. So please type your questions into the chat box, and we will try to get to the questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to type them as we go, as you think of them. This presentation is being recorded, and we will make it available on our website in the very near future. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome a 2016 Fallingwater Institute Artist in Residence, Andrew Pielage, who is an architecture and travel photographer based in Phoenix, Arizona, who is on a mission to photograph all of Wright's remaining designs. He has over 20 years of experience, which includes international ad campaigns and publications, television features, exhibitions, and workshops, some hosted here at Fallingwater. And if you follow Frank Lloyd Wright related news, you have likely seen his work because it has been published extensively. So welcome, Andrew, and thank you for being here today.
All right, thanks so much for having me. This is an awesome experience. I'm really excited. So I'm actually going to stop my video so I don't distract you. So I don't distract you from the, hopefully some eye candy. I'm going to give you a little bit here, but let me go back here. So again, thanks for being here. Like Ashley mentioned, my name is Andrew Pielage, and I am an architectural and travel photographer here in the Sonoran Desert of Phoenix, Arizona. So thanks for hanging out. So real quick, here are my social media outlets and website. So I have a bunch more Frank Lloyd Wright images on these 3 locations. So if you're interested in what you see today, want to see more, this is where to check out more Frank Lloyd Wright stuff from me. So today I wanted to give you a quick update on my project to photograph all of Frank Lloyd Wright's remaining designs. And then I want to jump into my experience as an artist in residence at Fallingwater. But first, I wanted to do just a quick background on myself and the project. So growing up, my dad was a geologist and my mom was an adventurous. So I was literally out in the back roads and back country of Arizona before I could walk. So I think I've literally seen every corner of Arizona, and I have the rocks in my front yard to prove that. So my mom bought my first camera. It was a Walgreens disposable camera, and I took it along on these camping trips and geology trips. I took pictures of clouds and weird stuff in the bushes, kind of whatever interested the friends that came along. And then we bring them back and have them developed in Walgreens. And then they'd give them to me, and I'd put them in a photo album, and it's really cool. I probably have 3 or 4 photo albums of early images of weird stuff. So it's cool to still have those. So, fast forward in, I turned 16, got my own wheels, and now I'm heading out to national parks and going backpacking and hiking, continuing kind of that outdoor lifestyle. And all along, I'm bringing my camera, and now I don't have the cardboard Walgreens disposable camera anymore. I have, I think it was a Canon G6 maybe at that point. But all of the subjects were still landscape. I wasn't taking really people or or, you know, anything else at that point. So really, I consider my roots in photography are in the landscapes, and they're really landscapes of the desert Southwest here. And I think that's going to become important as we go along in the slideshow. It'll make a little more sense as we go through. So my wife and I are still really active, you know, traveling, you know, minus the weirdness of 2020. You know, we like to do at least 2 kind of big trips every year, you know, around the world. And I, you know, always have my camera with me. So I want to go through a few of these images on the screen for you. And let me get my fancy laser pointer out. So if, I don't know if, hopefully you can see that little red point. But that's me, upper left, that little squirt there with the curly hair. I have no idea what's going on with my hands. Maybe it's Walk Like an Egyptian. I'm not even sure if that song was out at that point, but that's my big brother, Jeff, there. And that's at our gold claims in Mayer, Arizona. They put us to, my parents put us to work early, young. So next one over on the right is Redwoods National Park in Northern California. If you've ever been to the Grand Canyon and you look down and you feel really small and it's such a massive scale, that's the same thing that happens to you at Redwoods National Park looking up. Those things are just massive, massive trees. And I felt like I was a little Ewok from Return of the Jedi. I was going to pop out and scare me on the trail the entire time. But it's a wonderful place. And just for scale, that's my wife there, blue and red. That little blue and red dot there, that's my wife. So you can kind of get a scale on how big and massive these things are. Next is the right. That is Ironwood National Monument. So this is about an hour and a half outside of Phoenix from me. Just a beautiful display of Sonoran Desert. That's our king of the Sonoran Desert, the saguaro cactus there with all of his kids at the base. Everyone's checking out the sunset just like I was. But we go there often. It's a beautiful place, pretty remote as well. Then lower left is Horseshoe Bend. So this is, again, in Arizona, northern Arizona, just south of Page, Lake Powell, just south of there. And you can see why they call it Horseshoe Bend. That's the Colorado. I spent a couple nights sleeping in my truck waiting for a winter wonderland at this place. And the last night, it's really stormed all night. So I was pretty excited to run up to this viewpoint thinking it was going to be, you know, covered in snow. And this is what I got. So you can kind of see the snow on the ridgeline in the back there. But I still think it's a wonderful place, you know, to go and explore if you're ever in the area. Next one is, I'm sure you're familiar with it, Machu Picchu. So Lori, my wife, and I did the Inca Trail. And one of the advantages of doing the Inca Trail, backpacking that, is you actually go in the sun gate or the back door of Machu Picchu. And the other advantage is you get to go in a little bit early. So we got in, I don't know, maybe a half an hour or an hour earlier than opening the front gate of Machu Picchu, is where all the buses and, you know, the main tourists come into the site. So it was really nice to get there a little bit early and take some photos without a billion people at the site. So that's just a brief, you know, background of me. I think there's a common theme of, you know, landscapes and the outdoors in these images. So let's move on here. So Taliesin West. So my love for Frank Lloyd Wright really started at Taliesin West here, and this is in Arizona in 2011. And like most of you, it started with a tour. Wonderful tour, fascinating stuff. And I've been photographing Wright and teaching workshops around the country ever since. So I love this quote by Wright. He says, a building should appear to grow easily from its site and be shaped to harmonize with its surroundings. I really like that, shaped to harmonize with its surroundings, in that quote. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to talk a lot more about that, you know, in this presentation. But Taliesin West, it's really interesting. I mean, we all know Fallingwater is on that level of harmonizing that many other sites, the majority of sites, are not. And I would almost say that Taliesin West for me is kind of on that same level of blending and harmonizing that architecture to landscape. And that blending and harmonizing is what really initially sparked my interest in Frank Lloyd Wright. It wasn't necessarily his architecture yet. I loved photographing landscapes, and it was the same respect and appreciation he had for the landscape and that integration that I loved as well. You know, from those images on the previous slide, I love the landscapes. And so it was that blending and that harmonizing of the two that really started my passion for Frank Lloyd Wright. So a little update. I said I'd give an update on the project. So I have, if you're not familiar, I have a project to photograph all of Frank Lloyd Wright's remaining designs. And that started in 2016. And it actually started on an NPR radio interview with my friend Lauren Gilger. I had only captured a few Wright designs at that point, but as we were going through the interview, her last question was, so how many do you want to photograph? And you know, there's really only one answer to that question. So, you know, I said all of them. And that was really kind of the birth of the project. And that's when that light bulb also popped in my head as well. So, you know, it's interesting to go back on there, and at that time, I really didn't know what kind of impact that would have on my photography career. So, you know, looking back on that, it's such a fun story to tell, and it's recorded as well, which is really neat. So, so the update on the project. So I recently returned from a 3-week road trip in the Midwest. I had the wonderful opportunity to photograph 5 private homes, Frank Lloyd Wright homes, and 2 public sites. And I actually got to stay overnight, 3 nights in one property designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Such an amazing experience. And, you know, I just want to thank all the owners of those private homes, if they're on here. And, you know, they were so gracious to allow me to come photograph. And I'm really excited that they're added in to the project now. So that now puts me at, in the mid 80s, probably 85 of Wright designs are now included. You know, there's a couple numbers floating around as far as how many he still has remaining. I'm going by the 431 number. So, you know, 85, 431, I'm almost there. You know, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I have to keep reminding myself that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So here's one of the more unique designs in Minnesota that I was able to photograph. It's Wright's R.W. Lindholm service station, built in 1956. It's the only Wright designed working gas station in the world. Wright originally wanted to have the gas pumps hanging down from the coverings. So, you know, I think it was over here. Ashley's seen the drawings, and I think they were up here as well, but that would have been a really cool, neat thing to see. And yes, it will be the only photo I'm going to show from that trip. I can't give away all the goodies here, people. So if you want to see more, make sure you check out that website or the, you know, the social media, Facebook and Instagram. I have a bunch more photos of the trip and those private homes that I photographed there. All right, let's move on. Fallingwater, the main event here. So this image was taken November 9th, 2016. This was actually the first sunrise of my 30-day artist in residence. I was up all night, super excited. I came bouncing into Fallingwater the next morning. I'm sure the security guards loved all my excitement of this, you know, nerdy photographer running up there and taking photos. But like we talked earlier, Fallingwater is so connected to the landscape. And I get that, I agree with that, but you know, what does that look like in a photograph? So how do you capture the essence of that relationship in one image? You know, and that's the question I was trying to solve among some other ones, you know, while I was staying there during my time as artist in residence. So it's, you know, it's not just about having both the landscape and the architecture in the same image. You know, I needed something else or some other way to display this, you know, kind of relationship, or we're going to use the word souls here in a minute. So, and this was one of the first ways I envisioned that connection, was using the sun flare. So using the sunlight shooting through the woods off there to the left, you know, landing directly onto Fallingwater, and it's almost like it's a handshake or a high five between the two of nature and architecture interacting with each other. And you can see kind of the light shining on Fallingwater in this lower section here. So you can leave comments there. We're going to get to comments and questions at the end, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. So I call this the Bear Run shot. So Bear Run is actually the stream that goes underneath underneath Fallingwater. And, you know, at the beginning of my time there, I found myself photographing the landscape more than the architecture. And I know this is weird, all this super wonderful opportunity as an artist in residence, and I'm not even photographing the house. But you should remember that my roots are in landscape. So I wanted to start with that, and I wanted to kind of work my way around the building before I get into Fallingwater. So, you know, I think I was actually blown away by the new landscapes I was photographing first, and Fallingwater second. And I hope we're not having a mass exodus of people because I said that, but again, it was the landscapes, and you know, I was coming from the desert. So it's a completely new form. Heck, there's, you know, water in this landscape, which I don't have a whole bunch of in Arizona. And, you know, all this green vegetation. I mean, this is November, but there's still a lot more vegetation, the falling leaves. You know, we just don't see a lot of this in the desert here. So, and I learned on early on that Wright designs are not just one thing. So for me as a photographer, there's really three, and this is what I kind of took into my artist in residence time there at Fallingwater. It's nature, architecture, and light. So, and I really think that all three of these have a soul and they have a personality. And so it's these three souls that are really living together and sharing a common space. And so within these three souls, you have multiple combinations to tell the story to people of what you want to see as a viewer. So we're going to see some more of combining all of those, but you know, this photo is clearly focusing on the nature side with, you know, that little house in the background called Fallingwater. And you really have to remember this is November, so, and I'm a desert rat. So I literally had an 800 fill down jacket on, insulated pants, hiking boots, insulated coffee mug with me the entire 2 weeks I was there in November. It was freezing for me. So, but it was also a wonderful experience. Maybe I'm a little weak on that. It was probably only 50 degrees and I'm wearing a parka. So I'm sorry, that's just how it rolls. So let's move on here. So I call this the golden hatch. So this is the hatch. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but for now, you know, along with the shooting in the beginning, the first few days were spent observing this third soul, and that's the light, and where and when it shined. You know, you can have the best, most beautiful subject like I did of Fallingwater, but if you don't capture it in the correct light, you're not really doing it justice. So you've spent all this time to find a good subject. You need to spend just as much time or even more photographing it in the correct light. So I was looking for interesting compositions and then going back to the subjects in the correct light. And a lot of the times that was even the next day. And I'm going to say a famous quote here, and I may have some workshop folks that can probably say it along with me here, but one of my favorite quotes with light is, "You don't chase light, you wait for it." Light is something that you should be anticipating and not running around to try to capture. And that's really the essence of a lot of these photos, sitting, having the time, having that luxury of, you know, having 2 weeks. So I guess I should explain, it's a 30-day artist in residence, but my time was split into two. So it was basically 2 weeks in November and 2 weeks in June. Which was amazing. And so you're going to see the different landscapes in the photos between those two. So, but back to that light, that's what this image is about. It's the correct light, in my opinion, I should say that, the correct light. So this was a low, it was yellow, it bounces off that water of Bear Run and illuminating the cantilever that it comes down from. So a lot of times this cantilever is in shadow. And so there's certain times during the day where you get this nice reflection. You can see the supports there underneath as well a little bit too. And, you know, then I wanted to throw in a few fall leaves here down on the bottom left, just to add a little bit more to the story. Now you have a time frame. You don't have a whole lot of vegetation. So this gives a nice little added bonus to the story of the hatch and the light, and it being November and autumn time. So, and going back to the souls here, I think these souls are really well represented, all three of them here. So we obviously have the architecture, we have the nature of the leaves and Bear Run, and we have that beautiful light coming through. So, you know, Artist in Residence starts, I'm feeling pretty darn good. I got a great sunrise shot. I got that shot in Bear Run, and now I just got this beautiful light on the hatch shot, and then I take a photo like this. So even as professional photographers, we can't all hit home runs with our photos every time. So I actually totally blocked this shot out of my memory until I was looking back at images for this presentation. And, you know, hey, why not take a photo and block out both the landscape and the architecture? You know, that's going to be a great shot. So this was kind of a joke shot. And if, you know, I really believe, though, if you're not taking bad shots, you're not experimenting enough. And, you know, with digital cameras, it's awesome. And you should just shoot away. You know, take some time and thought to get the shots you want. But everybody makes mistakes. And it's, you know, it's not about nailing the shot every time. And so here's a great example of not nailing a shot at Fallingwater. All right, so here are the night shots, and on that kind of theme of experimenting, you know, once the sun goes down in the valley of Fallingwater, it's dark, like really dark, like scary dark. So, you know, you put me up in the Sonoran Desert at night, and I'm living my best life. But in the deep woods of Pennsylvania, it is scary times down there. And Ashley actually has Ashley and I have a funny story about being scared in the dark. So maybe one of you guys can ask her about that when we get to the questions part. I've forgiven her for what she's done, and we're still friends, but it's still a deep scar I have from being scared by her. So it's a funny story. So I've done, you know, a lot of learning through experimenting with long exposures at night. And this really started early on in you know, my career. And I was going out to the airport. I have some airport plane shots of long exposures at night and some in the desert. But, you know, now I have a smaller subject. I have a house. I have falling water as my subject, and not these big, you know, airports or deserts. So I decided to add another layer of experimenting with something I had never experimented with before, and that's called light painting. So I brought along with me two portable 2-foot by 2-foot LED light panels and just started to paint the light into the subject back and forth. So, you know, if you can't visualize it, it's almost like two really big flashlights. And so the process is I start my long exposure on the camera. So I push the shutter down, I'm recording the light now, and maybe, you know, I want to say these are probably 8 seconds-ish exposures. And now I'm shining my LED light and introducing light onto the subject just long enough so I can get the exposure that I'm looking for. So this is not an easy process. It's not a perfect science, and I wasn't good at it. So this took me a while to get everything just how I wanted it. So let's dive into these photos a little bit. So this first one, upper left here, this is what it looks like with just the camera. So I've pushed the shutter speed, I've opened up my camera now for about 8 seconds, and this is the light that I'm getting. So I'm getting this ambient light from above. This is past sunrise now, or sunset, excuse me. And then this is the only light that's in this deep valley, and that's coming from Fallingwater. And you can see it kind of spilling out a little bit onto the cantilever down here and a little bit of the bushes here, but obviously we got a lot of dark areas, you know, underneath. So move on to the image below that. So now I'm taking that same exposure with my camera, but now I've introduced these LED panels, and it's really just one. And again, you can imagine it just to being like a flashlight. And so if the exposure is 8 seconds, it doesn't necessarily mean the flashlight or the light painting is done for 8 seconds. And that's where kind of the art and practicing and experimenting takes place. So maybe the exposure is 8 seconds, but the light panel I'm only shining for 3 or 4 or 6 seconds. So it's a lot of experimenting. It's a lot of fun. And you can see down below, so this is the light shining on this little branch here, a little bush. There's a big rock right in Bear Run right here, and I was standing on top of that to get this vantage point. And here's a little mistake of mine walking in front of the camera with the LED light while the long exposure is going. But you can kind of see the wavy marks of how I was shining the flashlight back and forth. And then, with a little bit of magic and a little bit of editing, this is the final image on the right. So now we have falling water is exposed correctly, and now you get a lot more information in your photo. You get the light beams coming through on the trees, you get the waterfall, and you get more vegetation here. So this was actually put on the 2019 Falling Water calendar, which was awesome. I kind of let Falling Water decide what image is going to go on the front cover, and I was so happy to see this on the front cover, because this was really one of the images that I thought about taking immediately when I got the green light to be an artist in residence. So let's look at another example here. So I talked a little bit about this one on my Instagram, but left-hand photo. So again, this is just interactions. So this is just the camera exposure only. So there's no light being introduced yet. It's a little overexposed here, and I wanted to show you that so you could at least see a little bit of the vegetation around and the waterfalls and what the light looks like deep in the valley. Then we have this side. So now this is actually 2 LED panels. So I have one down here that I placed at the base of the waterfalls. It's kind of shooting up, trying to get the hatch and the supports over here. And I'm leaving that there, running down that path and going back to the view that I'm sure we've all seen photos from or have been. And then now I'm using another panel to illuminate this foreground. And I, really didn't know exactly what to expect. I didn't know if my LED panels were going to be strong enough to get that far into that far of a reach. But, I'm happy with the image, and it really highlights all the layers of the forest and the vegetation here, which I wasn't really expecting that to do that. So it was a really interesting experience and experiment, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So, and I originally thought this was a little dude standing up there, but that's the top of the Buddha head there. All right, so living room, falling water. So this is such a great room to relax in. If you ever have the opportunity to do nothing in this room, I highly recommend it. It's one of the most peaceful rooms that I've ever had a chance to not only photograph but experience. And I meant to talk to Justin and Ashley about this. I was thinking maybe we could make this into a little spa. So people could come in with their white robes and their white slippers and have mani-pedis. We could do massages upstairs. People could go down to the hatch and dip in the water. Just a thought. Just because it is so relaxing. We can talk about that later, but just a suggestion. But with the relaxation and, going back to the photography side of this, this is a very, very difficult room to photograph. It's really deep, as you can kind of get that sense in this photo, and it's not very tall either. So when you take photos in this space, you tend to get a lot of ceiling and or floor in your images. So just a quick side note here. So besides the night shots that we just looked at, I'm only using natural or ambient light in all of my Frank Lloyd Wright photography. So that means I'm not introducing any other light into his spaces. Wright was such a master at designing how light interacts within his designs and architecture. So, I'm not about to be that diva photographer that thinks that I can bring in, light to his spaces and create shadows where there shouldn't be shadows, and you know, maybe illuminate or highlight something that he didn't necessarily want it highlighted. So in the entire project, you know, my Frank Lloyd Wright project, it's all natural or ambient light. So I don't introduce, you guys have seen those examples where I do when I was experimenting, but other than that, I do not. So, but so back to this image. So one way to photograph this space is in smaller sections. And I'm sure, you know, you've seen a lot of photos of this space, and they seem to be cut into little vignettes or corners, or, you know, furniture or the windows, or we highlight the fireplace. There's smaller kind of sections of them. But I was really up for the challenge to try to find out if I could get a picture that worked of the whole thing. And this is one of the beauties of being an artist in residence is, you know, we have these challenges, and now I have the time to work through. I don't have to rush through a space and try to get it in 2 hours or 4 or 8 hours. You know, I have 2 weeks at a time. And, you know, that's really a testament to Fallingwater and their artist in residence program. It's such a wonderful program, and, you know, they allow you to only worry about your art and only try to be creative. It's not just them giving you access or doing, you know, your project. They're really taking care of everything that you would need. So I was 150% focused on just my photography and just my art, trying to produce photos that I was proud of. So it's really a big kudos to Fallingwater. And it, you know, it's an experience I will never forget. So I'm going to stop there before I start crying. So, you know, with that time that I had to shoot this space, I shot it from every corner. And so this was really the best corner that I thought really captured the essence of the living room. And, you know, we've got Kaufman Sr. over there keeping an eye on what I'm doing as well. So he's never far away from you at Fallingwater. So let me know what you think about the image. We can talk about it. Any of the images, we can talk about it, you know, when we're done with the presentation here. So the open hatch, this is another one I posted on Instagram to talk about. So, you know, doing some research on the hatch, I read that Kaufman, and this is Kaufman Jr.'s words, and I read that Kaufman Sr. was not a big fan of this. He questioned the value of the steps leading down from the inside of the living room to Bear Run, which just baffles me. I mean, I can't really imagine Fallingwater without this design feature. And Kaufman Jr. goes in a little bit further when he writes, and he says, so Wright considered the steps not so much of a proposal, but of a decision. So I think we all know what happens when Wright decides he wants something as a design feature. And, you know, I'm so glad that he, you know, persevered and won that discussion with Kaufman Sr. Because I can't imagine this design feature out not being at Fallingwater. So, so I wasn't actually a super fan of this photo when I first took it. It was really more just to kind of document the space. But, you know, I think going back and editing through this image and putting them together, there's a lot to this space. And now it's really one of my my favorite images of Fallingwater. So, you know, if we're going to go back to these souls, it has all this little space has all the souls we've been talking about. So if we're going to start with nature, you know, your eye leads right down to Bear Run there, which is the water. If you look straight ahead, you have that wonderful vegetation line that Wright created with the windows. And then you have these skylights, or, you know, the sky above you. Then architecture. I mean, look how many features, unique Fallingwater features are in this photo. So the stonework, the sliding hatch here, the corner windows, you know, the stairs going down. It's such an amazing design element. And then the last soul that needs to meet here is the sun, is the light. So this was taken at a specific time to capture it how I wanted. So whenever you have a photo like this, and it's what we call leading lines, so these lines or these holes or this light leads you in through the photo, up and almost out of the photo. And whenever I do that, I try to have light be the source that brings you through the photos, along with the leading lines of the architecture as well. So this was taken at a specific time where there's light shining down on Bear Run, which is straight down, and on that bottom step. You know, that doesn't always happen at Fallingwater, so you have to take it, you know, earlier in the morning when that sun's around that side of it. And so again, this was one of these observations I made, and then coming back to it, you know, when the light was correct. All right, next one is the night hatch. So again, so glad that this design element came through at Fallingwater. And, you know, this for me is really where it all comes together. So, you know, I keep talking about these souls. This is really where the three souls are meeting and blending. And, you know, water is such an important feature to Fallingwater, but this is the only place that Bear Run actually touches the house. So it's a very special and sacred place for me. I'm sure as there's probably others as well. But so looking at these images, this is the first image I took of it on the left. I wasn't really happy with it. This is taken from on top of the bridge shooting down. And this, again, was such an important area for me that I really needed to think about this image and come back to it and do it differently because I wasn't happy with this. And so I think this photo on the right was actually taken months different, you know, months away from the first one. And in my opinion, it's a much better view of this. So now I'm, instead of being on top of the bridge, I'm underneath the bridge. And I am eye level. And more importantly, when you get down low like this now, this tells the entire story of the light in the image. So if you look at the very top up here, this is where the light is starting. So it's coming in from the living room and it's shining, bumping its way all the way down these steps to this bottom tier. And now we also see the end of the light. So the end of the light is going to be this light here on Bear Run. And so I really think that that adds a whole lot to the story of the hatch and the light coming down. And so I'm much happier with this image on the right than I am on the left. Again, let us know what you think in the comments, and you know, we'll get to them at the end here. All right, so this is underneath, obviously, Fallingwater. And so I was there 30 days for artists in residence. I've also done some workshops there. So I don't know, probably 50, 60 days I've had the wonderful opportunity to spend at Fallingwater. And this is the only time in that, you know, really 2 months that I've spent there that we had floodwaters. And you see so many of the pictures of Fallingwater, and I take them too, and where that water is really kind of blurred out. And it's beautiful, it's very smooth and silky, you know, it builds romance into the building. But, you know, when these floodwaters came down and gave me the opportunity to go down there and photograph, it wasn't about having sexy water and having the flowing, you know, romance of it. This was a powerful source of water that was coming down Bear Run, and something that I had never experienced before. And so I really thought that instead of flowing that water, that I could try to freeze that water. So this is just a shorter shutter speed, trying to freeze the water. And I really think that this captures the essence of the power of that water underneath Fallingwater. And I love the kind of turbulent aspect of it in the foreground here, leading up to the you know, the falls there. And for me, you know, it's not just something I see. I can still feel and hear you know, this water crashing down underneath the water. So it was, you know, such an amazing experience. And you know, I'm really glad that I got to experience it. It does do some damage, unfortunately, it has, you know, but you know, it's also at the same time an amazing experience to witness and to be able to photograph it this close. So, all right. So this is, if I don't ever say which photo is my favorite ever, it just might be this one. So I'm never going to admit that, but. But the story around this is this was done, full disclosure, not during the artist in residence, but I thought my people might enjoy Fallingwater gurus might enjoy this image. So it was taken at a beginner workshop, and this was Sunday of the workshop. And the workshops end at noon. And so that Sunday morning is really kind of just a free time for the students to photograph whatever we didn't really get to, or they want to go back and re-photograph. And by this time the rain was starting to kind of come off and on. And I was really excited because all these beginner photographers still wanted to go out and shoot in the rain, which was awesome. And so we went down to the view, and, you know, we had our cameras covered, and we're, you know, shooting back. They're shooting. I have my camera around my neck, but I don't really shoot during the workshops. You know, at that point, it's about the students and the students only, except for when stuff like this happens. So they were all shooting, and it was starting to rain a little bit more. So they're starting to put their gear away. They're, you know, not facing falling water. And I'm just, you know, taking the time to, you know, take in the view, and this fog was kind of there already. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have this light from the angels or Buddha or whoever you believe in coming down from that left-hand side. And it was just such a magical moment. I flipped up my camera. I took maybe 5-10 shots at the most. And this is the result of those photos. And this is a really a special moment for me, because as a professional photographer, there's really nothing I could have done to create this shot. I just happened to be there when this happened, so and was there to capture it. And so this image for me will always be called the gift, and it's a gift from Mother Nature. You know, maybe for the hard work I put in, maybe, you know, for some other reasons, but so for that reason, you know, I will always call this image the gift. All right, well, that concludes my presentation. I hope you have got something out of it and have some questions. At least you got some good eye candy happening for you, I hope. And big thank you for showing up, and big thank you to Fallingwater. I don't think I can thank you guys enough. I don't want to mention names because I'll forget somebody, but it was such a wonderful experience for me, both on a personal and professional level. You know, just to have that opportunity and work through some of these scenarios, and it is an experience I will never forget. So thanks again.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a great presentation, and I'm glad that I was on mute because you really made me laugh a few times. Although I do really like the spa idea. I'm not sure if we will be able to convince Justin, but I can see it. I can see it.
All right. Well, I guess that's on Justin now, huh?
So I want to get to some of these really great questions that are coming through. And we have such a lively chat going on, and also the Q&A box. So I'm going to try to get to the questions that were in chat and both the Q&A. And the first one that came through, I saw a question when you were showing your first image of Fallingwater from afar with the stream. And someone had commented that both the foreground and the background, it was all in focus, and they wanted to know how you did that.
Yeah, so there's, you can do what they call image stacking. So that means, or I'm sorry, focus stacking, which means you set your focus point at maybe 3 or 5 different points along your image. But I found that I didn't really need to do that. So there's a couple different things going on with that image, but as far as the focusing, it was, I would say, an F18. So that means that I, have a small aperture, but it's a large depth of field. And when we say depth of field, that just is saying what's in focus in the image. So the higher the f-stop number, the more that's in focus. And so when you start getting up into that F18, F20, F22, that's when you can start to get a lot of it in focus. But if you want to get technical, the higher you go up in that range, the less detail or the less sharpness you get out of your lens. So usually I try to stay kind of in the middle or the upper ends of that. So it was just taken at F18. And I want to say that the focus was probably on those on that big rock outcropping in the front. I don't think I had that focus point on the house because, again, that was a nature shot for me. So the rocks in that waterfall, and I wanted to compass all of those leaves in that circular section as well. I wanted to include all that in there first over the house.
Great. So I'm going to go in order through the Q&A questions. The first question is from Yvette Nelson, who we know
Yay!
here at Fallingwater. Hi,
Yay!
Yvette. And she wants to know how your gallery project is coming along.
Nice. Okay. Yes. So it is still in the works is the short answer for that. So the plans have been approved through the city of Phoenix. And so that will be happening hopefully in the next couple months. It's been a longer process, again, because of 2020 and with the city, it took a little extra time because of COVID and how plans were getting passed back and forth. But it will be happening, and I will be displaying, my Frank Lloyd Wright project in the gallery, which will be in downtown Phoenix here. But it will also include highlighting local photographers. So I really want to keep it just to photography. And, I think there's so many talented photographers out here in the Phoenix area that are not really getting the press as in New York or in LA. So, I'm trying to do my little part to have them have a show and have people come and be impressed with their work as much as I'm impressed with these local photographers. So short answer, it is in the works. Hang tight.
All right. And I saw a few questions about this. This is a really good question about whether or not you lived at Fallingwater during the residency. And I can see how someone might think that, considering that you are taking photos at all hours. Yeah,
definitely. Living is probably an accurate description just because I was there really all day and all night. We go back to that quote of, you don't chase light, you wait for it. So if sunrise is at 6 a.m., I'm not there at, 5:50 trying to find the shot. I'm there in the dark with the headlamp, finding compositions that I like. So I was up early. I don't really like to shoot in the middle of the day. Just because that light is so bright and so harsh. So I would go back to my place and take a power nap. And then I would come back and shoot kind of that afternoon sunset into night light. But as far as actually living in Fallingwater, that is only in my dreams. I wish I could have stayed in the house. I don't think anyone ever gets to stay in the house. So I did not. I was put up just outside Fallingwater, maybe a 2-minute drive from Fallingwater. So, and they, again, really gave me free reign. So all that access is only because I was an artist in residence. So I guess, Ashley, maybe we should make that clear that you cannot roam around to some of these locations. You'll get in big trouble with Fallingwater. So don't go down beneath the waterfall. Don't go in Bear Run. That was just special access.
Yes, so I guess that is a good answer. Our artists in residence stay off-site, but very nearby. Yeah, and another question, can you talk a little bit about the process that you went through to become an artist in residence at Fallingwater? And maybe this is a question that I should answer. So our Fallingwater has a long history of hosting artists and scholars in residence. Starting in 1964, the first artist in residence was Roger Torrey Peterson, who worked on illustrations of birds right in the living room at the partner's desk, in this picture that we see behind Andrew. And then, as far as I know, there were no additional artists in residence until about 2005. Felix de la Concha, who is a painter, was hosted on site, and he created a series of paintings. And then in 2016, we decided to restart the Artist and Scholar in Residence program. And we needed some test subjects, someone who could really test it out and see how it worked. And our previous curator of education, Roy Young, was acquainted with Andrew's work. And so he was selected as kind of a guinea pig. So I'm glad that it was a good experience for you.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, the project continues. Each year we host a few artists and scholars on our site. And there's an application process. There's information on our website if you are watching this and you are interested.
Yeah, I was so happy to be the guinea pig. You can call me whatever you want. Just you know, it was a wonderful experience, and like Ashley mentioned, it's not just photography. So there's any art form can apply. I'm assuming that's right, Ashley.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you don't just have to be a photographer. It's really any art. And again, it was really a hands-off experience, and I mean that in a good way, from Fallingwater, just allowing me to get into the zone and dealing with all the people that were taking tours, telling them about the guy that's standing in the bushes taking photos. I think I got labeled the bush guy a couple different times during my artist in residence, but honestly, for me at that point, I didn't know if I would ever be back to Fallingwater. So that was a time where I was going to capture that site from every corner that I could and really try to perfect my art. And Fallingwater allowed me to do that.
Yeah, it's true. It should be, I should add further clarity that the angles from which Andrew was taking photos are parts of our site that are not accessible to the general public. So he was given special access. And one of the questions that came through, Andrew was allowed to go below the falls, which nobody else is allowed to do that. And Amy wanted to know if it was slippery.
I think Amy already knows the answer to that question. So yes, in all seriousness, that is a very, very dangerous place down there. Those rocks are really slippery, even if they're not wet. I fell, I would say multiple times, not very hard. And I was more worried about my camera equipment than myself. I break a hip, that'll heal, but I just didn't want to lose my camera kind of deal. But those are unique experiences, and that's a lot of responsibility for me to make sure that I capture that area correctly and respectfully. And so nothing was done without their permission. But yes, to answer Amy's question, yes, she knows that they are very, very slippery and cold.
Yeah. And Andrew's residency was also unique in that he really was accessing the house at all hours. And that is why I could not resist the opportunity to sneak up behind him and make him think he was having a paranormal experience in the dark. So that's what he was referring to earlier. However, I don't normally do that. It's just the opportunity was there, and you're a really good sport. So after losing my sock. So I was, quick story, I was down at the View taking photos. I think it was like the first night or second night. And I told you guys, it's pitch dark down there. I mean, you saw those photos. And so there's nobody out there. His security guard is there. He runs around doing his thing. I see him, occasionally, but there's nothing else going on down there. And so I'm in the zone, looking at my camera, got the tripod, figuring the panel lights, and then all of a sudden, Ashley is like right behind me. And I don't even think she said boo or anything. She was just standing there, and I turned around and I lost my socks on that. I almost ran straight for my car after that. So if you're ever in the forest with Ashley at night, make sure you keep an eye on her, because she will sneak up on you. Fair warning. So some more questions. So there are some questions about the LED lights that you use, what kind they are, and a question about, is that something that a non-professional can learn to use?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I honestly don't remember the brand, but if you search LED panels, there'll be a billion that come up. Absolutely, you do not need to be professional. They're super lightweight. I mean, they're really just a panel of LEDs right in a row. So there's, you can buy them in different strengths, basically. So you can get real small ones that have like 25 up to, thousands of them. And the cool thing about those is if you are interested in doing that, make sure you get the ones that are adjustable as far as brightness, and the white balance is adjustable too. So you can change the color temperature of the LEDs from like a cold blue to a warm. I found that very useful, and I highly recommend them, but you don't need to go out and buy LED panels to do this. I have an image on my website of Romeo and Juliet from Taliesin, and I think that was done with a flashlight. So you can use whatever you have around. I mean, if you're up close to something, you can use the flashlight on your phone. So any light source will work. But if it's really something you want to experiment with, make sure you get adjustable brightness and adjustable white balance on there. And they range from probably $50 to $1,000, just depending on what you need. But they're nice because they're really light and thin, so you can put them in a backpack and carry them with you. So they make it really nice you can go do landscape stuff with them as well.
All right. On the night Fallingwater photo, were the stars on the lights intentional? Were they a filter?
That was intentional. Should I try to?
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah, I don't want to be super annoying with this. Was it this one? Is it this one? I think these are the only two night. Oh, right here. Okay. So they're probably talking about these right here. Yeah, that was intentional. That's done through your aperture settings. So your aperture has inlets that kind of come in on each other. When you close up your aperture, it's like your eye. And so when you close those down, there's light that still comes through those little gaps. And so you get this effect at, again, kind of your upper f-stop. So when you're closing it down, like this was probably done at an f18 again, or f20, and that is definitely an intentional thing. The lights have to be kind of just right, angling towards the camera, but it's a really fun effect. And those lights are the same thing that is on the sunrise. So it's the exact same concept. So this is taken at a probably f18, f20. You can go up to 22 or 32, whatever your lens does. So I love the effect. I try to do this star or the sunrise stuff and those lights at every property that I shoot.
We have so many great questions, but unfortunately we are now out of time, and I'm really sorry if we did not get to your question. I hope that you'll still send them to me or to Andrew. Great questions. So I really hope that you enjoyed hearing about Andrew's work. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It was an awesome experience. Thank you all for being here.
We have postponed his photography workshops that were scheduled for this year. They will now be in 2021, and you can find information about those on our website, and you can actually register for them now if you would like to. We are currently at Fallingwater. We are open for tours, exterior tours only at the moment because of COVID-19. But if you are nearby and you'd like to visit us, reservations are encouraged in advance. So please visit our website to make a reservation. As you can imagine, due to the COVID-19 situation, we were closed for about 13 weeks in the winter and spring. And so we had a lot of reduced revenue for the season. Significant loss in revenue. So if you can, consider donating to us. The link to donate is at the bottom of the page here, www.fallingwater.org/donate. And please visit our website to find out more about future lectures or other ways to learn about Fallingwater. Again, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome. Thanks everybody for showing up, and stay in touch through the social media or send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yes, thanks everybody for joining us.